So talking about test scores of students, value-added models, there's been a lot of new research that's been coming out that is throwing that into doubt as a tool to measure teacher effectiveness. So, Randi, what is a fair way, an accurate way to measure teacher effectiveness?
So I think we have to answer 4 questions, and it's not Passover. I was just wondering if anybody was listening. Number 1, do teachers have the tools and conditions they need to actually do the job they've been asked to do? And there's a whole bunch of different ways to measure that. Number 2, have I taught the information that I think I'm supposed to be teaching? Number 3, have kids learned the information that I think I'm supposed to be teaching? And number 4, if the other 3 questions, if people have been given the tools and either they haven't been able to teach it and or kids haven't learned it and somebody has tried to help, then the person shouldn't be in the profession. And the question becomes, how do you measure all of these things? So number 1, there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can do it in terms of collective bargaining. You can do it in terms of teacher surveys. You can do it in terms of school surveys. But if someone says, as a school teacher, you can't give me a class of 40 kids with no materials and expect that I'm going to be able to teach with proficiency all of the new Common Core standards, and no one does anything about that, that's not fair. That's not fair to the kids. That's not fair to the teacher. So there has to be some ways of making sure that people have the resources they need to do the job. Number 2, in terms of have I taught it, that's where lots of the different observation processes come into place. Self-reflection, administrative observation, peer observation. There's a lot more research about how observations really work. Number 3, and this is the area that is probably most contentious, have kids learned it? And so the question is, are you really going to say a once a year test where you really have no idea what's going to be on the test or not is a fair measure for a teacher? A fairer measure would be if we could figure out meaningful measures of student learning. So if I don't teach math, but say I was a math teacher and I taught fractions, and 90% of my kids failed the fractions test that I gave in class, and if I'm not reflecting on that moment at that time, what happened there, that's about my teaching. That's not about kids learning. And so if you don't do that at that time in real time, that's what teacher evaluation should be about.
This past week, Randi, there were 2 interesting studies about teacher evaluations. There was one about calling VAM and some of the things it's measuring into question. There's another one looking at teacher observations, showing that there can be bias in those as well. One that showed that value added may not be measuring what we think it's measuring. Where does that leave you? I mean, at what level? We know that the research on these systems is developing, as we implement them, but what level of uncertainty are you and other unions willing to live with?
So that's a really good question. And let me answer it this way. Teaching is an art as well as a science. And I think about Albert Einstein, who most people believe was brilliant and a brilliant quant person. And he probably more than anybody else, was pretty caustic about trying to reduce everything to a number.
In Orange County, 99% of teachers are rated effective or highly effective, which means they get the maximum raises. And I was wondering kind of two things on that. One, why do you think there's still so much objection to VAM, even though they're doing very well on it? And second, does 99% of teachers being rated effective and highly effective mean there's something wrong with the evaluation system? Should it be more spread out?
So I get asked this question a lot, but doesn't it say something to you about teachers that even when they see those results, when they know that something is fundamentally unfair, they challenge it? Doesn't that say something about teachers and about who they are in terms of their character? And what we're seeing is in 3 or 4 of the states that were the front runners on evaluations, you're seeing some of those same results. But what I would say is that if we know something is wrong and that a test is not accurate or reliable, why are we using it?